Most people today will know Drayton Manor Park, situated on the edge of the Mercian capital of Tamworth, as a theme park, a place of high-octane thrills and noisy family days out. Prior to becoming a place of leisure for the masses, however, it was a large country estate and the seat of the illustrious Peel family. The first Sir Robert Peel, a wealthy industrialist, purchased the old Elizabethan manor house at Drayton, once home to the Earl of Leicester, in the 1790s, turning the decaying, half-timbered building into an elegant three-storied Georgian home. In 1830 his son, the second Sir Robert Peel, MP for Tamworth, founder of the modern police force and later Prime Minister of Great Britain, replaced this comparatively modest Georgian manor with a much larger house, designed by the fashionable architect Robert Smirke. The new manor, with its cream-faced walls and gilded cupolas, was a home fit for a prominent statesman and his growing family. In 1843, the estate was graced with a visit from Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. The castle's archives have a number of records of this visit, including this illustrated commemorative account of the royal visit, pictured left. The archives also recently acquired several fabric samples from the visit, including pieces from dresses worn by Queen Victoria, the purple stripe pattern pictured here and the beautiful lace, and Lady Peel, the yellow and pink fabrics in the bottom picture. Yet just 2 generations later, in 1926, the last remnants of the Drayton Manor estate were being sold off at public auction, and the wealth of the Peel family had all but vanished. How did this happen? As always with history, the answer is long, complicated and multifaceted. It involves acts of parliament, financial mismanagement, changing social conditions and family disputes. It's a story worthy of a novel, so settle in while I tell you all about the decimation of Drayton Manor and the scandalous life of Sir Robert Peel IV. Born in 1867, the fourth Sir Robert Peel, yes, they are all called Robert, inherited the estate at Drayton Manor and the baronetcy at the age of 29. The new baronet inherited an estate that was heavily mortgaged. Furthermore, he was also a bankrupt himself, having submitted to a bankruptcy order showing gross liabilities of £57,166, a vast sum, in November 1893. According to Robert, these debts had been accrued through losses made on betting and via gambling on the stock exchange. He also admitted that he was beginning to get extravagant when confronted by the court about the £24,000 he managed to spend during 1892 alone. If the young Sir Robert thought that he would be able to pay off his liabilities with income from Drayton Manor, he was to be sorely disappointed. During the third Sir Robert's tenure, the estate had fallen on hard times, thanks to a combination of Sir Robert's love of horse racing, extravagant entertainments, refurbishments, and various litigations. The third Sir Robert, pictured here, was also an MP, but his political career was less illustrious than his father's. He had a love of horse racing, and alongside his wife, Lady Emily Peel, started a stud farm at Bone Hill, near Drayton. An expensive way to spend money. Lord Cairns' Settled Land Act of 1882 prevented Sir Robert from selling entailed estates such as Drayton Manor, but it didn't prevent them being mortgaged or the sale of associated land or possessions. The second Sir Robert had invested in a fine collection of artworks, but in 1871 several of the more prominent pieces, including both Rubens, Rembrandt and Van Dyck, were sold to the National Gallery for £75,000 in an effort to keep the estate afloat. By 1884, the Peel estates, which had extended to over 10,000 acres, were being broken up and sold, but it became apparent that more would be needed. In 1890, the estate was resettled, with the tenancy entail, wherein the estate would be inherited wholesale by the eldest son, was reduced to a tenancy for life. This meant that when the fourth Sir Robert inherited the estate in 1895, he was allowed to live at Drayton Manor and to enjoy the chattels and furniture thereof, but he had no real control over the estate's income. Instead, the heavily mortgaged estate was held by trustees, who allowed Sir Robert an income of around £3,000 to £5,000 per year. This arrangement was to be fractious, to say the least. These newspaper clippings, taken from the local paper, the Tamworth Herald, show us that the handsome new baronet was received in Tamworth by a large and enthusiastic crowd. At the local Oddfellows dinner, he announced the intention of residing at Drayton Manor, but he was to be disappointed by its condition. Speaking in 1899, Sir Robert's legal adviser stated that the new baronet found the manor to be in a very bad state of repair, and that the trains were all wrong. Despite this, the new Sir Robert initially made a very good show of being the genial lord of the manor. In August 1895, he presented a diamond brooch to Miss Jasper, the manageress of the Peel Arms in Tamworth, where he'd been staying, in thanks for the kind service that he had received while staying there. In September of 1895, he received an illuminated address on behalf of all the tenants of Drayton Manor, and promised to do anything in his power for the welfare of the villages around the estate. He also expressed a desire to be active in the life of the town by joining the Oddfellows and the local cricket team. At the same time, Sir Robert was also in the process of clearing his debts. In October 1895, a new bankruptcy proposal was agreed with his creditors, which allowed for the annulment of the 1893 bankruptcy order. Things were looking up. Sir Robert's good fortune was not, however, to last. Tensions between the new Sir Robert and the trustees of the settled estates can be identified as early as 1896, when a Mr. Frederick Aldrich brought a case against the estate trustees for an unpaid tailoring bill. The bill, which was for the grand sum of £17, quite a lot of money at the time, was for new clothes for the gamekeepers at Drayton Manor. You can see some of the male servants, including the gamekeepers, pictured here to get an idea of the clothing that they would have worn. The purchase had been authorised by Sir Robert, and the trustees disputed liability for the bill, arguing that as they had not authorised the purchase of the clothing, liability for the bill belonged to Sir Robert personally, and not to the estate. The presiding judge at Tamworth County Court concurred, stating that the trustees' duties are to carry out the trusts of those estates, and not to pay Sir Robert Peel's debts. Relations soured further, and in December 1896, the lead trustee, Mr. Daniel von der Haight, launched an action against Sir Robert in the London Chancery Division, claiming that the new baronet had removed 19 cases of the Peel plate, meaning the family silver, from Drayton Manor without authorisation of the trustees. Sir Robert's argument that the plate was removed owing to the unsanitary condition of Drayton Manor was summarily dismissed by the judge, Mr. Justice Chitty, who chastised him for putting the chattels in jeopardy and ordered them to be returned to the trustees. Sir Robert's good relations with the town of Tamworth had also begun to sour. In late 1895, he wrote to the local paper, the Tamworth Herald, to complain that he was being systematically annoyed by persons sending me anonymous communications. In 1896, he also authorised the closure of the Peel School, pictured here, which had been established by the first Sir Robert to provide for the education of 50 boys annually. In a further letter to the Herald, Sir Robert claimed that his father had withdrawn the capital sum of £6,000 upon which the school was maintained. Whilst he was attempting to recover this money from his father's legal estate, Sir Robert advised the paper that he did not feel inclined to carry on the school at his own expense in the meantime, a decision that did not especially endear him to the townsfolk of Tamworth. Sir Robert's personal life was also becoming a source for scandal. Handsome and charming, the fourth Sir Robert made frequent appearances in the gossip columns of London scandal sheets, entertaining distinguished guests at Drayton Manor and hosting lavish house parties. but by 1896 he appeared to want to settle down. On the 29th of August, an announcement of his engagement to the Honourable Ella Williamson, eldest daughter of wealthy manufacturer Lord Ashton, appeared in the Daily Mail. By the 2nd of September, however, the engagement was off, with Lord Ashton making an announcement in the Mail, of which he was part proprietor, that there is not the remotest possibility of a marriage taking place between my daughter and Sir Robert Peel, as the contemplated marriage would not be satisfactory to Miss Williams' welfare. The Tamworth Herald, gleefully reporting on West End gossip, suggests that the marriage, which would have seen Lord Ashton settle Sir Robert's remaining debts and establish a generous £15,000 to £20,000 per annum income on the couple, was called off after the bride-to-be received a letter casting aspersions on Sir Robert's character. Despite Sir Robert's protestations of innocence, the engagement remained broken, and the Honourable Miss Williamson later went on to marry his cousin, Viscount Robert Wellesley Peel. By 1897, Sir Robert was in money trouble once again. Further bankruptcy notices are listed against him in April and December of that year, the first brought by a certain Viscount Honour, a man that Sir Robert terms a moneylender, and the second by Messrs. Sugden and Harford of 10 Ironmonger Lane, London. Ironmonger Lane was, for much of the 19th century, a busy commercial street, with several drapers and mercers in residence. Given Sir Robert's penchant for fashion, it's possible that Messrs. Sugden and Harford were outfitters, or that they were suppliers for some of the extensive interior renovations he'd been authorising at Drayton Manor, which included replacement of 300 sets of window blinds. Either way, their bill had clearly not been paid. Despite this, Sir Robert doesn't appear to have been dissuaded from his extravagant lifestyle. On the 22nd of June 1897, he married Mercedes de Graffenried, reputed to be a wealthy heiress. She, in turn, appears to have thought her new husband, with his substantial landed estates, was a rich man. On the newly married couple's arrival at Drayton Manor, there were lavish entertainments, including a torchlit procession, and shortly after their marriage, the baronet built Swiss Lodge, a pretty wooden house near one of the entrances to the estate, in honour of his new wife. On the 8th of April 1898, the couple welcomed a son, Robert, although by then the fairy tale marriage was already falling apart. Following the bankruptcy notices of 1897, Sir Robert's creditors had succeeded in obtaining orders against him. This led, in January 1898, to the embarrassing spectacle of the sale of the baronet's personal effects. Clothing and apparel, including several unworn suits and silk garments, went under the hammer. Sir Robert's collection of ornamental birds was also sold in what the Tamworth Herald described as one of the most curious and least edifying scenes in the history of the estate. In a further curious incident at the start of the sale, the auctioneer, Mr. J. E. Evans of Stafford, was required to jump through one of the windows of the manor, as someone had objected to the door being opened. As a result of this, the sale took place outside, with the auctioneer taking up position close to the entrance of Sir Robert's private sitting room, and articles being passed through the window to him. Following this event, Sir Robert and Lady Peel appeared to have left Drayton Manor for Paris, where they resided in a fashionable hotel. Without the knowledge or consent of the estate's trustees, they also took 16 of Drayton Manor's famous paintings with them, asking that the estate's coachman, Charles Culling, put them into the hands of a personal friend at the Charing Cross Hotel. This included a beautiful portrait of Lady Julia Peel, wife of the Prime Minister, painted by the famous society artist Sir Thomas Lawrence, as well as a half-length portrait of Sheridan by Sir Thomas Gainsborough. As soon as the disappearance was discovered, the estate's trustees lodged an injunction to return the heirlooms to Drayton Manor. Sir Robert, however, had already sold 6 of the paintings, including the portrait of his grandmother, to a Parisian picture dealer, Mr. Kleinberger, with others placed in the hands of Messrs. Rutley, picture dealers in London. Although the trustees were able to locate 7 of the 16 pictures and to have them returned to the estate, the remaining 8 were either sold or pledged, meaning pawned, by Sir Robert. The sorry affair raised £3,400, which, after the payment of fees and commissions, left £1,700 for Sir Robert. This was, according to the baronet, immediately given to another man, a Mr. Martin, as a surety for a debt. Even at £3,400, it was a fraction of the true value of these paintings. By 1898, then, Sir Robert was in serious financial trouble. Attempts to raise money by opening Drayton Manor to the public, and even by publishing a semi-autobiographical novel entitled A Bit of a Fool, had failed to secure sufficient funds to pay his debts or support his lavish lifestyle. Accounts filed in April show gross debts of a staggering £316,610, of which £32,610 is unsecured. Furthermore, the Peel estates were mortgaged for a further £284,000. Sir Robert attributes much of this debt to his solicitor, Mr. Hague, who had apparently failed to pay the baronet's debtors and instead absconded with a substantial amount of money before falling into bankruptcy himself. The trustees of Mr. Hague's estate, however, disputed that accusation, claiming that the solicitor's money troubles were as a result of Sir Robert's failure to settle his bills. Either way, Sir Robert's situation was by this point a dire one. The baronet had, for several years, been living far behind his income, accruing debts of £1,175 for wine, £367 for carriage hire and horses, £2,150 for money borrowed, and £1,062 for assorted jewellery, and that was in 1895 alone. Consequently, by 1898, he was unable to support his wife and child, and was forced to approach the court for permission to sell further heirlooms from the estate. The court agreed to several sales, resulting in an almost wholesale plunder of the contents of Drayton Manor. In March 1898, carriages, plate, several plated articles, decorative items, engravings, sporting guns, bed and table linen, saddlery, harnesses, and horse clothing all went under the hammer at Willis's rooms in London. The sale also included the oxidised silver casket that contained the illuminated address presented to Sir Robert by his Drayton tenants in 1895. A sad end to the promise that this arrival at the estate had appeared to hold. Despite objections from Sir Robert's uncle, Viscount Peel, a sale of further plate was authorised in 1899, with Sir Robert's lawyer successfully arguing that a fund to support Lady Peel and her infant son was of far more use to the family than a vast house left full of pictures and statuary for the benefit of nobody. While Sir Robert was prevented from selling the books or the statues or of stripping the great house entirely of all the chattels that were in it, it was decided that any plate without family interest could be sold to establish a fund for the maintenance of Lady Peel and for the education of her son. As Sir Robert Peel and Lady Peel were no longer resident at Drayton Manor by this point, it was also proposed that the house was let until such a time as their son came of age. A tenant was eventually secured in 1900 when Mr. Eugene Kelly, a New York banker, let the manor. Sir Robert's money troubles continued for the remainder of his life. Further bankruptcy notices were issued against him in 1901, 1903, and 1909, whilst portions of the estate continued to be sold off as the needs arose. He also ended up in several libel actions, including a libel against his brother-in-law, Daniel von der Haight, and a further legal action against the estate's trustees. In both instances, the court found against the unfortunate baronet. The wider Drayton Manor estate was sold off in lots in 1919. However, the house and the immediate grounds were withdrawn from that sale at the last minute. On the 12th of February 1925, the fourth Sir Robert Peel died, aged 57. His son, the fifth Sir Robert, was to inherit the title but never appears to have lived at Drayton Manor, and the mansion and its grounds were eventually sold at auction in April 1926. They were purchased by a Mr. G. H. King of Aberdeen for £6,780. Mr. King also bought the adjoining stables for a further £400 before proceeding to demolish the mansion house and the adjoining park farm with a view to turning it into a garden city. Now all that remains of this once great estate is the clock tower, which can still be seen in the theme park that now resides on the site. I hope you've enjoyed this video about the lost estate of Drayton Manor and the lively life of the fourth Sir Robert Peel. For more information about the history of Tamworth, you can visit the collections website of Tamworth Castle and Archives. We have recently started a collections blog, and new items are being added to the collections website all the time. You can also follow us on social media for more about the castle, the archives, the collections, and for details about all of our events.